Stories of our first responders overdosing from accidentally coming into contact with fentanyl are on the rise. The state of Ohio and the Governor's Cabinet Opiate Action Team have put together this brief training so you can better protect yourself against the dangers. We'll hear from a first responder whose story about a close call highlights the dangers of fentanyl. Review potentially risky scenarios for exposure, talk about the signs of an overdose, and also the precautions first responders can take to reduce the risk of exposure.
I'm Officer Todd Wall with the Advanced Training Unit, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a danger that our officers are facing almost on a daily basis, and that's fentanyl. Recently, there was an officer in Ohio that suffered an overdose shortly after being involved in a narcotic-related arrest. And today we're lucky enough to have that officer with us. It's Officer Chris Green of the East Liverpool Police Department.
I arrived on scene and was advised by the uniformed officers that they were destroying evidence in the vehicle. One of the suspects is a known and self-admitted heroin and fentanyl user, which we were initially thinking it was fentanyl. We took all the precautions necessary: gloves, goggles, mask. The officer collecting that out of the vehicle managed to scrape up some of it off the seat and the floorboard. As I walk out the door, I'm right at the threshold of the door. I'm alerted by another officer that I have something on my shirt, on the tail of my shirt. I reach back to grab the tail of my shirt, pull it to the front. By then, my fingers are already in it. Instinctively, I brush it off. My fingers are already wet from previously wearing the gloves, the nitrile gloves. Your hands tend to sweat in it. Cash reactions, dry them off, and go about your business.
And how would you describe how much was on your shirt? How much of a...
If you would take a pencil eraser, number 2 pencil eraser, the size of a dot that I seen was maybe a quarter of that. It looked like a couple pieces of lint. But with it being on the tail of my shirt, I never brushed up against the guys, never got in the car. I think about that moment every day. How in the world did that get on my shirt? I'm not sure how long I was in the hospital, how long I was incoherent. It was explained to me that I was given several doses of Narcan. I continued to be monitored, went through several heart tests and other tests, and they determined everything was fine. It was the nastiness of the fentanyl.
Well, I thank you very much for coming and sharing that story with us, and sharing it with the Columbus Division of Police. And you can see just what kind of a risk, just how dangerous any interaction with fentanyl can be. So we're gonna finish with going over some things that we can do to protect ourselves, some precautions we can take to help us from having an exposure to fentanyl.
Fentanyl is a powerful synthetic drug similar to morphine and heroin, but it's 50 to 100 times more potent. Fentanyl and carfentanil pose a significant threat to law enforcement and to other first responders, including fire and emergency medical personnel. The DEA determined it only takes 2 to 3 milligrams of fentanyl to induce respiratory depression, arrest, and possibly death. 2 milligrams of fentanyl is about the same as 5 individual grains of table salt. Fentanyl-related substances are designed to be absorbed into the body by all means, including injection, oral ingestion, inhalation, contact with mucous membranes, and through the skin. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention indicate that while dermal absorption is rare, the risk can increase with the presence of moisture on the skin. Accidental exposure can occur under many circumstances, including during the execution of search or arrest warrants, the purchase of fentanyl during undercover operations, the processing of drug evidence, or even the processing of non-drug evidence that may have come into contact with fentanyl, such as pill presses, scales, money, or cell phones. While in the presence of suspected fentanyl substances, refrain from eating, drinking, or smoking. Those are all ways you could ingest traces of the drug you unknowingly have on your body or your clothes. Police dogs are also at risk of serious health effects from exposure to fentanyl. Because of the national opioid crisis and prevalence of fentanyl in the domestic market, law enforcement personnel and first responders should look for any fentanyl indicators, such as powders, pills, or capsules, when conducting motor vehicle stops or responding to calls for service. If you see evidence of fentanyl or are responding to the scene of a suspected drug overdose, the DEA recommends using personal protective equipment, also known as PPE. The Ohio Department of Public Safety Division of Emergency Medical Services emphasizes the importance of donning PPE for all patient encounters, even when opioids are not suspected. When encountering unknown powders, you are encouraged to use PPE, which includes nitrile gloves, an N95 mask, eye protection, disposable paper suit or paper coveralls, and shoe covers. Naloxone should also be readily available for administration. Law enforcement should not attempt to collect or otherwise disturb any suspected fentanyl, carfentanil, synthetic opioid, or unknown powdered substance without employing proper PPE, as this could cause unintentional exposure during the evidence collection process. Using proper technique when putting on and taking off personal protective equipment can cut down on your risk of exposure. Donning, the process of putting on PPE. Donning should be done in a specific order to create protective barriers. First, your gown or similar clothing cover, then your mask, being sure to fit the nose piece snugly against your skin. Depending on your unit, you may have access to a P100 respirator or an N95 desk mask. Next, nitrile gloves. If they are large enough, these can be layered on over duty gloves, as the leather of your regular gloves can provide added protection against needle sticks. Be sure to pull the edges of the gloves up over your sleeves. Tape can be used to hold the gloves in place and create an added barrier to exposure. Some divisions have additional pieces such as eye protection, shoe covers, or hoods, which can be put on in this final step. Doffing, the removal of personal protective equipment. When ready to take off your personal protective equipment, it is critical to remove layers in a particular order. First, tear off the gown, carefully pulling it off so it ends up inside out. When you reach your wrists, use the gown to pull the gloves off, also turning them inside out. If you are able to do so, wash your hands before removing eye equipment and masks. If your unit only uses nitrile gloves, these can be pulled up over the long sleeves of your uniform. To remove the gloves, pinch the wrist of one hand, pulling the glove off inside out. On the second hand, hook your finger under the edge of the glove, touching only the inside, then pull that glove off inside out. Know the signs of an opioid overdose so you can get life-saving help fast should your colleagues show any of the symptoms. These include pinpoint pupils, unresponsive or decreased mental status, absent or decreased breathing or gasping, cold, clammy skin, blue lips, or nails. While Narcan can reverse respiratory depression, it is not effective for cardiac arrest. With any signs of overdose, you should seek medical attention immediately. Unfortunately, stories of our first responders overdosing from accidentally coming into contact with fentanyl are on the rise. Take time to protect yourself from the dangers. For more details about first responder precautions, check out the DEA's Briefing Guide for First Responders. To learn more about GCOAT, the Governor's Cabinet Opiate Action Team, visit fightingopiateabuse.ohio.gov.